Okay, welcome back to Box to the Battlefield. I'm in the process tonight. I'm just going to show the process for laying down the groundwork for Dave's Brummbar. And I've brought here a diorama made by a man named John Gerke. He built it about 5 or 6 years ago. And it has the feeling and the wrecked factory that maybe would be representative in Stalingrad dioramas or what have you. The sort of thing away from the boiler and some of the things, but what we want to do is focus in on what these what this platoon is walking through, all the thing, and then we're going to duplicate it on this diorama here, this little vignette. I'm not going to have 4 or 5 figures here. Dave's going to do the Brummbar, and I may have just a couple of figures. Now Dave wants to have his Brummbar in a situation where he can remove it from its setting and then take it on to a show to enter in its category by itself. And I totally understand that completely. But one of the things you're going to have to do is make it removable. So Dave's suspension in his Brummbar is not wavy, to correspond with the contours of the ground and anything like that. It's too difficult to do. So as we've spoken in the past, you have to make up one of these little stretchers to catch the wheels. And I made it a little tighter so that, of course, you can't see the little stretcher once it's placed in the plaster, and you're just going to have an overlap of about 1/8 of an inch on each side for the tracks, and the tracks themselves will hide the wooden structure underneath. But and then Dave's tank will never be glued down to this base. It'll always have a home. Now, obviously, the Brummbar is based on this chassis, so I'm using this shelf queen as a help for measurement and what have you. It's obviously, give or take, identical to Dave's Brummbar. So what I'm going to do, and one of the things you want to do is you don't want it to lie flat. You can take all these things out of here, and then you have a Brummbar that lies flat on its base, and it's boring. It's so easy to make it a little interesting just with a couple of pieces of foam and a bit of groundwork. So all I did was cut a piece of groundwork, or excuse me, a piece of foam, creating a little contour in the ground. And if the contour becomes too left or right and off balance, it's very easy just to make up these little wedges here. And you can put the wedge anywhere you want. You can tuck it underneath the front, you can tuck it in the side, you can tuck it in the back, and you can just cut them to any size you want. So these little shims are a great help to balance off where you want to put in your Brummbar. So, or it could be any tank, to be honest. So just don't hesitate to cut a few of these little shims to put it in a position. So I'm sort of thinking for Dave's Brummbar, it's like so. He's got the lamp here, street lamp, and then we're going to use a piece of street for the side here. So how do we go from this point? Well, one of the things I always use is some weld bond. It's like white glue, only a little bit stronger. So we'll just remove these things, put down a little weld bond under here. It's not going to take much to hold on to this foam, so it's got to be economical at all times. So I just put out a little bit. Moving around with a stick. And like I say, it doesn't take much to hold this down, so don't put out a huge clump. It's not necessary. Place that down. Now I've already pre-cut this sidewalk here to fit into the diorama. So this piece of sidewalk from Barbakan has already been sliced and diced. And I'll be painting that as we move across the diorama itself. Okay, so now we want to put in our little tank catch. And I find that this is just a little, it's sloping too far. So all I'm going to do is use my little shim underneath here, like so, and just shim that up a bit. And guys, make sure that when you make these stretchers that the bottom part is facing down, because you don't, obviously the tank isn't going to sit on it if it's reversed like so. You have to make sure that it's sitting like this. And I'm not even going to glue that in, because it's going to take some fine adjustment once we get the tank on. But anyway, there it is with the shim, and we're going to just pretend that this is Dave's Brummbar. And of course there's the lamp. So all I do is I'm just going to glue our shim right to there. And again, this is foam, so it's light as a feather. Doesn't take any effort to glue it down. Make sure that that's in place. Everything's looking good. Now, one of the next steps is the plaster itself. In other words, the groundwork is all contoured, you know, up and around before you get to the boiler, and then around the back here. So you got to have a foundation. What I like to use is just a regular drywall compound. Again, economics. It's very inexpensive. And there's enough here to make 5 or 6 dioramas. So, and if you're like Dan Capriano, maybe one. God bless him, he does beautiful things. So, the huge dioramas, the way he does them, is very difficult. And he's one of the very few guys who can pull off making huge dioramas. So just take a good scoop and then just start filling it up. And all you're going to do, guys, is just get some foundation down. Make sure that you cover up your base with a little bit of masking tape. And make sure that none of the plaster goes over top of your little stretcher that you made. Otherwise it causes a bump and your tank will ride up. So make sure that you don't put any down on top of these wooden beams here. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys to tears by laying it all over the whole thing. I'm going to show you a small little sample, and then off camera I'm going to fill in all the blanks as far as putting this same plaster up in this area. But I'm going to show you how to add all the sticks, the bricks, and all that sort of stuff. So I'll just get it all in there. It's like icing a cake. Pretty easy stuff. Bring it to an edge. All right. Now, one of the things we needed is a few of the bricks. And just pinch off some bricks like so. Just put them random. Make sure they don't get on your wood. And don't worry about painting them. because all these things are going to get covered up with wood and with different pieces of, you know, you can take a tin from a Coca-Cola can, you know, take the, you know, there's all kinds of pieces of building that fall and pieces of rooftop and everything, so you can use a Coca-Cola tin, cut it up into little pieces, which I'll show you as we move forward to the final stages of this little vignette. But then all of us, I think, have a pile of wood that we've in the scrap heap that we've had for years. Well, today's the day we're going to use them, and they've probably been hanging around forever. And just break them off, stick them in. And don't worry that they're not painted yet, because we're going to sit down after all this is hardened up and start painting. Just take different ones, bust them off, stick them in. And if you guys have ever been to a construction site, you know that houses are more than 50% all wood. At least they are here in Ontario. You know, the bricks are just for the weathering conditions, but as far as the amount of wood in a structure or a building, boy, there's tons of it, absolutely. And in the times of World War II, those buildings were built you know, 20 years ahead of time. So the amount of wood that's actually in your structures is tons. So you have to duplicate all that and just stick them in randomly, like so. And don't worry at all about it, the color, because it's all going to be painted. Get some small ones in here. And the wood, of course, they're pieces of windowsill, pieces of door, structural pieces, pieces of staircase, all that sort of stuff. So as far as the size goes, it doesn't matter what size you're going to use, because there's 100 different things, you know, pieces of furniture that have been busted. And as Dave and I spoke earlier about getting these things ready for a show, certainly don't let shows, you know, don't let your model suffer because there's a calendar date, you know, we're all going to go off to, you know, a show in Pittsburgh or something. So don't let your model be sacrificed because of it. Just bring it to Pittsburgh the following year, but don't let the timelines hurt your model. These things have to sit on your shelf 364 days of the year, and one day they're at a model show. So don't sacrifice that sort of stuff. If you don't make it, and then you have your model in such a way that you can lift it on and off moving forward, like so, it's not going to matter when the show is. And you see now, this Panzer IV fits right into the groundwork. And once I'm going to paint this all black and then start popping out all the bricks and things. So I'm going to do that on camera. But there's little things that you have to know. In other words, don't let any of this plaster touch the Panzer IV, otherwise it'll get locked in. But you can see I can just lift that out, take it on to Pittsburgh or whatever the show is, and carry on building my diorama here. And then when the groundwork's all done, all I do is fit it back on again, and presto. Now I'm gonna do a little bit of the crack in here, and you can see that there's a huge negative space underneath this front here. So all I'm gonna do is lie down some plaster, which I'm gonna show you. And keep in mind, gentlemen, that the drone of a B-17 or a Lancaster bomber hammering away at all these buildings and things, there's going to be little left. So, and they don't, you guys have also seen pictures and books of bulldozers, American bulldozers, cleaning up the streets so that they can get on with what they're doing as far as tank movements and what have you. Sometimes you see the buildings which are all over the place and the streets are absolutely clean, and that's all caused by, you know, the bulldozers and what have you coming to clean it all up. So before they get there, of course, you have a huge mess like I'm creating right here. So all right, so test fit your Panzer IV, because we don't want to be using Dave's beautiful Brummbar for this sort of fitting, this little dress fitting. And as you can see, there's still a lot of overlap there, a big negative area. Just drop your plaster in there. And you can't have the Panzer IV flying through the air, guys. They're moving very slow, so you got to make sure that you've got it positioned properly. And by using a shelf clean like I am, you don't have to worry that a little bit gets on the track. So just drop a little more in here. Now you see I can go right over top of this cross beam here. Just fill in all the cracks. Like I say, it's like icing a cake. There's a very good movie out called Mrs. Henderson Presents. And it's set in England in World War II. But there's a scene, or I guess it's a V2 rocket or some possibly. It was pretty late in the war, I think. Thinking back, I haven't seen the movie in a couple years, but there's a scene where there's a building blown up near the Windmill Theater, and the wreckage and the bricks flying and the pieces of wood flying. It's a great scene, and the movie's called Mrs. Henderson Presents. It's Judi Dench. Most people have not seen the movie, unfortunately, but it is one of those great movies that happen, you know. Like I say, not a lot of the war stuff happens during the Blitz, and they keep the Windmill Theater open for the soldiers home on leave. But there's a fantastic blown up building in that movie, and you know, it's worth seeing. Absolutely worth seeing. So check it out. Mrs. Henderson Presents, and it is. Watch for that scene where the building blows up and all the rubble. Now, once this is all dry, you're going to give the model a shake test. Everybody knows what that is. It's where all the loose stuff goes flying off. And don't worry about it. We're putting on extra, knowing that a lot of it's going to fly off. So don't worry about that. And that's why we have white glue. We're just going to add some more if we need to. So obviously, none of this is going to stick to the sidewalk. And when the shake test comes a day from now, all this sand here is going to end up in the waste bin. Don't worry about it. We can add it all back on later, because it's a nice effect to have all these stones flying everywhere. So don't hesitate to glue those back on. All the ones, see the ones represented here. All those stones are very important moving forward. Having said that, it would be wise to paint the sidewalk first, because there's no way you can paint around them. Be one of the last things that you actually do with the little vignette is to start add them individually, and but they're very effective and they're necessary. If I sweep this off if I had a brush right now and swept them all away, there would be something out of whack on our little diorama, and that would be it. So those little pebbles that have gotten away from us have to come back. And like I say, it's one of the last things we're going to do moving forward, but very necessary. So our little home for our Brummbar is starting to take shape. And I don't know what the markings on Dave's Brummbar represent. I don't remember where he said it was fighting. But I think the drone of a Lancaster bomber or B-17 is certainly overhead at all times that late in the war. So, all right, let's see how we're doing here with our... So remember, don't get any plaster on our rails here. Don't get any white glue or anything, because otherwise when you go to put this on, it's going to stick. So now we'll just drop it in like so. And as you can see, it's starting to come together. Now one of the things left to do is to mount our little street lamp. Now originally I had it planned for this corner. I'll still be able to do it, but having said all that, we can also add it right here if we need. Now, one of the things I should have done if I wanted it on this side is to obviously plant it and bury it, let the glue set, the day before, and then. But having said all that, I can now just take my drill a little hole through all this stuff once it sets up, and then just drop this through if this is the necessary side. But I think that maybe over here is just as good. Now, unfortunately, Dave's little Brummbar, of course, doesn't have a gun the way this one has a gun. So sometimes I use the barrel of the gun and the tank to point at things, such as, you know, this sort of thing going on. Obviously, not all of you are going to build a Brummbar, so I need you to listen to this sort of thing. This is a great way of shining light on something by using the barrel of this gun. So if you have something that you want to highlight over here, for instance, if you had the gun over here and I had a fire hydrant positioned right here, this would visually take the eye to the fire hydrant. And then once you get to the fire hydrant, then you've got that, usually they're made out of metal, of course, so you've got that bicycle chain kind of chipping on it. We could go at use the hairspray sort of technique on a fire hydrant. So there's 100 things you can do as far as pointing this. If you had a kid running towards the scene, you can always position the barrel so that your eye once again would point towards the child. So and chances are your gun, your tank is going to have a longer gun on it than, say, Dave's Brummbar. So take total advantage of the gun itself, as far as pointing out little elements in your vignette, such as crew members, such as children, fire hydrants, that sort of thing. Now, I'm going to swing around the back here and do the back off screen. But as you can see, if I was to let this all harden up and I wanted to have this as an individual tank, I can just lift it off and enter it on its own. And as you can see, there's no visual of this little wooden stretcher here when I have the tank sitting on top of it. So now you have to fill in all of this area anyway, because people do look underneath. And of course you're going to do this side, but make sure that you also do the part in here with the bricks and the sand and the dirt and gravel and what have you. The other thing you can do is Grant Line make a beautiful set of window frames for O-gauge trains, but they do look good enough to use in 35th. They're large enough to use in 35th scale. So probably before I go to paint this, I'm going to have a Grant Line window probably all bent, you know, a French window or something like that. I'll paint it on camera and I'll show you guys what to do with that. So you know, I'll probably use hairspray and, you know, do up the windowsill like an old piece of wood and then put the hairspray on. Obviously not in green this time. I'll change the color of the windowsills to match. So anyway, there's how quickly you can do the groundwork. And as you can see, you can just drop that Panzer IV back on there, and you know, these things are such a big help having these stretchers underneath. Plus too, it's also on an angle. It's sitting on a grade too, so you can put it anywhere you want, and your tank will fit right in. So next time I'll have all this finished for us, and then we'll go through the process of painting it. We'll start with the sidewalk and then move across. We'll have a stretch of road in here as well. So, but anyway, we'll paint it all black and then start bringing up all these bricks back up again individually, these pieces of wood individually. And believe it or not, once again, it's not going to take a lot of time. I will show you how rapidly it happens. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you ASAP. Thanks again. Take care.